and calling the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. This evening, following the practice that we have had for our last several meetings, we will have Airtable open for public comments and questions, and we will circle back to that after our informational update to check in on that, and we'll have some further discussion about our meeting process as we go through our updates. But first, I will turn it over to Bill.
Well, we had a very, very positive opening day today. Most of our staff were there, and we have a Carrie put together with the coordinators and the principals and some of the staff a very exciting professional development program. We spent a little bit of time introducing to the staff sort of the sequence of events that has occurred in our office since the closing in March, and what we have done to ensure their safety and the safety of students. And I believe it was well received, and the principals reported a very good day in terms of their professional development activities. I do want the parents to know also that we will be disinfecting the school buses between runs. That's very important. We did an actual disinfecting procedure last week utilizing a portable electrostatic sprayer. We have one for every school bus that runs in Westford. It took about 2 to 3 minutes, no more than that, to disinfect the bus with a dry time. Now, keep in mind, it was a stationary bus, not moving with the windows open and more air circulation, but even in a stationary condition, took about 4 minutes for the disinfectant to dry. And I'd like everyone to know that please understand that all of the cleaning materials and disinfecting materials that we use are EPA approved. They also meet the criteria for the Center for Disease Control and the Occupational Safety Hazard Administration for their ability to kill viruses and kill germs. So they are safe and they're effective. We have sent out also to the principals and to the staff the cleaning schedules and the procedures that will be followed by the custodians. We are moving one of the evening custodians down to the day shift, so we'll have 2 custodians on the day shift. That will be one in particular disinfecting and cleaning commonly touched surfaces often. We will have we have a log outside the bathrooms that will indicate to us when they have been sanitized, how often they've been sanitized during the portion of the school day that students and staff are in. So we have that log. And once again, the procedures are quite detailed and in accordance with CDC and OSHA requirements. I did distribute today to the principals and also to the union president the latest guidance document for from the state fire marshal's office with respect to fire drills and safety drills. That guidance document detailed the passing measurements in terms of hallways and egress that must be maintained at all times. And we most certainly do meet those requirements in terms of keeping the hallways clear, egress doors, entrance doors clear at all times. We also have been told, and we have distributed to the principals, the fact that in recognition of the need for appropriate distancing, that the fire and safety drills, just the drills, can be conducted in 2 or 3 phases so that the number of students at any one time is decreased. However, the most important thing is showing them how to get out of a building, okay? And so we are observing those very carefully, and I will be doing a video sometime tomorrow for parents, just giving them an update in terms of all of the things that we've done to try and maintain the health and safety of our staff and our students. And that is it for tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Lots of important updates as we're getting closer and closer to the start of school for our students. And happy first day to all of our staff who was back today. And Carrie, you're up next.
Thank you. Just piggybacking on what Bill has said, we are thrilled to have staff members back in the buildings and checking in with some of the principals. Their comments were that it was just so nice to have the buildings coming back to life again after being vacant for so long. So I think that there's this level of motivation, and the typical butterflies that you get at the beginning of the year are tripled or quadrupled given the circumstances. But one of the wonderful things about our staff is that they came with very positive attitudes, and they're really looking forward to moving in this direction as a team. We had many questions, which is terrific because people want to get the reopening just right, or as much as we can get it just right. And we just have to keep reminding people that this will be a work in progress, and we can assure our parents and our students that the children, when they return, are going to be well taken care of, and we are going to be first and foremost allowing them into the buildings in a safe way, but also making sure that we're meeting the needs of their kind of social and emotional well-being as well. So tomorrow we have a wonderful day 2 for professional development, and we're kicking off the morning with a keynote from Challenge Success, John Kleiman, and it's about nurturing student connections and in remote learning. So a lot of our professional development, while fundamentally when we're talking about social emotional learning, this is something that we've been doing for a while, but what's different is how we're doing it given the hybrid model and the remote learning that's embedded in it. So participants will have practical strategies and tools for building connections with and between students, both synchronously and asynchronously, and in socially distanced classrooms, and also embedding in equity and inclusion as well. And so that's kind of the theme for the more formal sessions for this week. It's around SEL and just making sure that first and foremost, we have that on the forefronts of our minds as we're planning for the student return. Then moving into next week, we have lots of sessions, many choices around the various technology tools that we have purchased. And we've always said it's not about the technology, it's about the student experience. But the technology tools that we have purchased really provide teachers with additional resources to make the remote experience more dynamic for our children. So I welcome the teachers back. I thank all of you and all of the parents in the community for your patience. And I know that sometimes information comes at the time where things need to be implemented, and it really takes a community understanding to help us get to the point where we're ready to go the week after next.
Thanks, Carrie. I know it's got to be difficult for all of the students out there to continue to wait for the start of the school year, but I am really so grateful that our staff has this period of time to really prepare for this unique year that we'll be having. So thank you for all of the efforts to make their professional development helpful and productive so that we can launch into this year. Ingrid, do you have updates now, or are they coming later?
Just quickly, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So I did include my initial year-end close. I mean, it's the final year-end close. The numbers that I referenced last week meeting. I'll do a full analysis for you at your next meeting for of where money was spent and our some analytics there. Just piggybacking on what Carrie says, we're still identifying the needs of all the schools, as we're reopening, as the principals are now have their staff in the building. So we're very busy ordering things and setting up, the school, helping the schools set up appropriately so that they have everything they need to welcome the students back. I did submit our coronavirus reopening grant application today for the $1.057 million. So that was submitted to DESE. And I had a lengthy conversation with Dan O'Donnell too, just talking about the funds on the town side and how we're going to be allocating those. So I will have a more detailed update for you on next meeting as well.
Ingrid, could you just clarify, because I know I've had this question, I know members of the public had this question. It seems like there are kind of different buckets of CARES money, and some is school and some is towns. So could you just explain that distinction?
Well, Dan and I actually wish there were more distinctions because there's a lot of gray area. So as you know, in March and April, the Congress passed various iterations of the CARES Act, and the money has trickled down now to the states. There were portions that were allocated directly to departments of education at the state level, and then the DESE in Massachusetts has allocated certain portions to the cities and towns in the various school districts, both regional and municipal. So we there's something called the ESSER grant. We received $20,000. That was allocated based on Title I status. So we last year were not a Title I community. So you may, if you ever saw the allocations, you'd see that many other communities got different amounts. 20,000 was kind of the minimum. So, and Carrie's utilized that for some of the software needs, I think Lexia. And then we also just more recently, they announced about 4 weeks ago, the school reopening grant, which is the $1.057 million that Westford was allocated. That's you may have heard about the $225 per student that was allocated. So that's our money that's only for education. And there's a list of allowed uses. That funding runs out, or we have to spend all that money before December 30th, 2020. So that was somewhat challenging when we were thinking about how to spend the money. And we made some strategic decisions too regarding how much staff is put on that grant versus expenses. One of the larger areas that we decided to
I think Ingrid has
frozen
for the moment. Okay, I'm thinking we will circle back because I'm guessing I'm not the only one. Oh, is Ingrid back?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You just froze for a second.
Oh, yes, I'm getting your internet connection is unstable here at central office. So,
2020.
2020 is right. Well, while we're waiting for Ingrid.
Yep. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, about half of our state money of the 1.057 million has been spent on HVAC analysis and repairs. An amount also has been allocated for long-term substitutes. Ingrid, if you're back, you want to? I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, that's right. That's all right. Carrie and Julie Bedreau had identified a great amount, as she expressed earlier, that some of the professional development they're doing and training for staff on software and technology. So those funds are being spent for that. And what else do we have in there? Some of the tents that are being used at some of the schools for outdoor classrooms, access points. I'll give you a whole rundown. I literally hit the submit button at 4 o'clock today. So.
Great, thank you. Any school committee questions on things we've discussed so far before we go to school committee updates? Ming Chen.
I have a question regarding the professional development. I lost my internet again, so hopefully I hear all the words. So how many staff show up today? And then how long is the professional development today?
Yes, well, we had about 500 or so, Bill, would you say,
Yes.
staff members
Mhm.
today. The professional development time for all of this week as well as all of next week, all 10 days, is from 8 o'clock until 2:30. And that's a mixture of certain sessions where it's kind of a formal training, as well as time with building principals. Today, for a while, principals were talking about processes and procedures, arrival, dismissal, cleaning, things of that nature. So it is a mixture throughout each day, but it's 8 to 2:30 every day.
So it's a typical work day.
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
And then the staff now actually stay in the building for the whole day.
Well, yes, we actually had come up with an agreement when we were bargaining the memorandum of agreement with the Westford Education Association, and 4 out of the 10 days are in person, today being the first of those 4. And the other 6, where primarily the sessions, actually all of the sessions on those 6 days are remote sessions. We have teachers, they have the flexibility to access those sessions from a remote location.
I have to turn off my video because my internet is really sketchy. So the staff, they are in the building whole day and also having lunch in the building?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's my question, is that the staff, they can have lunch in the building for professional development, but we cannot actually have lunch for our school year.
Say that last part. Can you repeat that last part, Ming Chen?
For the school year.
Well, one of the things we want to avoid, Ming Chen, is trying to have many students congregate in the same location, such as a cafeteria. So that was one of the strategic reasons. And Kerry, I didn't mean to, I wasn't sure whether you could hear Ming Chen or not. That was one of the primary reasons that we decided that we would not have staff and students having lunch in the building, was to avoid the congregation of a large number of people, because it would be progressively, or it would be increasingly difficult to maintain enough distancing between them without running many more lunch periods and sessions than we have during a traditional school year.
Right, and teachers are able to leave and go outside if they wish for lunch during these professional development days. They are often in their classrooms by themselves with no other individuals during lunchtime if they choose to stay in the school, which is a very different scenario than if we had hundreds of students under the roof at the same time.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. But most of the kids not going to bring lunch from the survey anyway.
That's right.
Any other questions, Alicia? And then Avery.
So super fast, it occurs to me, Carrie, that because I was in teaching and learning, I got to see the grid of the in-person and the remote professional development days. And one thing to let parents know is those remote professional development sessions, those are going to be available on those half-day Wednesdays throughout the next couple of weeks, correct?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It was actually very difficult to shave down the amount of topics we wanted to address over the course of the 2 weeks, because we knew we had to give building time for principals and time for teacher planning, teacher collaboration, working with the curriculum coordinators. So we actually had a laundry list of exciting topics that we want to address, and we had to prioritize what is absolutely needed to successfully get up and running the week after next. And those other topics, along with just hearing the feedback from staff and what they need, will be offered each Wednesday, or many of the Wednesdays, because that's the early release day, so that we can continue the training and the learning that's needed.
Right. It's not just a one-off 2 weeks and then launch and they're on their own. Yeah. Thank you.
For that. Yeah.
Avery?
Mine is actually kind of finance related. Ingrid and Bill, last meeting, not last week, last meeting, you introduced a job description to us, and I just wanted to make sure that didn't fall off the list, that we will see some numbers and the job description circle back at some point.
Yes, we made an intentional decision and request to move that to the next meeting because we wanted to make sure we had enough data for you.
Okay,
At this
thank
point,
you.
at this point in the year, and with everyone so focused on the reopening and COVID-related issues, it's slow receiving data from other school districts. So we wanted to provide as much as possible to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or school committee updates? Valerie?
I don't want to cut anyone off that had questions, but we're on just general updates, right? Okay. As part of this particular hybrid plan, you know, a lot of families have been struggling with figuring out childcare, and you know, the community organizations are working really hard with their guidelines and coming up with what works for them. But obviously none of it is free. So one thing that I have started to do was I reached out to the town social worker who falls under the Council of Aging department. And they have a COVID relief fund that she and her director think can be applied to childcare expenses. So we're kind of finalizing the details, but we'll share that on the town website, and we can work with Bill to maybe kind of include that in one of the school updates. But without kind of going into the fine details, it will definitely be donation based. So families that do feel like they're in a position to help other families could make donations to the Cameron Senior Center and write COVID Relief Fund in the memo line and mail it to the Cameron Senior Center. And then once we get a little bit more details, then families that have a demonstrated financial hardship related to COVID-19 would be able to apply for this and see some assistance based on the amount of the fund. So
Wonderful.
in the progress, but wanted to share that here.
We'll put that on the website, and I'll mention it on a video, Valerie, as soon as you're able to get that to me.
Great. I'll work that out with Allison, and we'll get you some like a blurb.
Thank you.
And Gloria,
Yep, Avery,
I
go
want
ahead.
to add too, since she brought it up, Bill and I have been meeting with childcare groups in town to establish safe and reliable childcare through the hybrid that would dovetail with the hybrid model. And I know that it is up on the website now, those programs that have started to submit their plans. And I believe it's under the parent tab on the Westford, the district website. Nina, I can actually, I'll post the link in this chat so people can see it. There's a couple there, and I know that I think we'll be getting a couple more. So we are working with as many groups as we can to have that. And so Valerie, that is amazing information from Allison. Thank you for putting that in place or reaching out.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. That is amazingly good news, and thank you to Bill and all of our partners across, you know, schools and town side and the community for trying to really crowdsource this problem and figure out how to provide the needed childcare to make this hybrid model work. It is really quite a feat, and it's wonderful to see. So thank you for all the collaboration and cooperation that's gone into trying to put solutions in place that will help families with the needs that we've certainly heard about this summer. Any other school committee updates at this point? Chris?
Yes, the policy subcommittee will be starting their meetings again. Hopefully we will be meeting at the end of this week. At this point, it's probably going to be Friday, given the 48-hour posting, advanced posting that we need. But for folks who maybe don't know this, you can go to the town website and sign up for alerts, email alerts when agendas get posted, so that you know when meetings are for things like the policy subcommittee that maybe aren't as widely publicized as the general school committee meeting. So, so the policy subcommittee will be meeting, and we might, it's the first meeting kind of the new year, and so it'll be a chance to sort of just get our bearings, and we might be doing some brainstorming around what policies might be. And we know a couple already that are going to be looked at, but what policies might be getting looked at, and especially with an eye to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that will be the lens that we'll be looking at some of the policies starting off. So people are welcome to join us. It'll be this one will probably be a remote meeting.
Great. Finance subcommittee will also be looking to have its kickoff as a new subcommittee. They'll be having their kickoff subcommittee meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks, just nailing down a time, and that would be announced publicly at the same location on the town website. Other announcements, Alicia.
So the superintendent search will be kicking off soon too. We're working on trying to get a physical space, but it's important for people to sign up for those notices, because we will be looking for public participation. We will be looking for stakeholders from parents, students, staff, and we will put out an application, and the whole process will be made public, but we will be doing that soon. So it is very important to sign up for those alerts from the town webpage if you want to be involved in any of that. We're trying to get our first meeting scheduled, but we haven't been in the buildings for so long that when I reached out to Nina, we both kind of went, how do we do this? So we will try and get our meeting scheduled as soon as possible and sign up for those alerts. They are very important.
We're working on school committee logistics as well. School committee would like to very much get back to meeting in person. We've started discussions with Westford Cat about how we could make that work. If we were all in person at our room at the Millennium Building, and then how would we just logistically and technologically arrange for remote access so that viewers could participate in the meetings, and we're just trying to work through the logistics of that. We're hoping to have that set up and arranged in time for our next meeting, September 14th, knock on wood, if we could just figure out the technology and logistics part. Anything else at this point? Or Hannah, do we have a student representative update? Or not yet, because you're not back yet?
I haven't talked about anything really with students. I know there was some things I wanted to talk about at the next meeting that they were posting about regarding the mascot and the face paint. I think the student council was planning on having a meeting, probably joint with school committee at some point, just to go over like the details of going back. I think a lot of the students don't really know a lot of the details, but I don't really have anything to share.
Well, we're happy to meet with the student council once you're back. We'll have to figure out the logistics of how we're going to make that work, whether it be in person or remote, but we will find a way to make it happen. Before moving on to our first topic of business, I did want to circle to the questions in our queue. Some of them are definitely reopening related, so we might discuss them in our reopening segment. Question, it's reopening. There is a comment that most staff did eat lunch outside today. And there was a question, is childcare for teachers being addressed? I'm assuming that the same resources that are available to the community are also available to all of our teachers, Bill?
That's correct.
And yep, the other couple of questions here are all reopening related. So if those members of the public are patient till we get to that point in our agenda, I think we can now turn it over to our guests from the select board. Tom Clay and Anita Tankaran-Wen are joining us tonight from the select board to give us an update on some of their recent efforts.
Hi. Yeah.
So good to see you all.
Thanks for inviting us and having us join your meeting. I know you have so much stuff to cover, so we'll just kind of jump right in. I'll go ahead and get started, and Tom will just, feel free to let me know or jump in for anything that I've missed. But just to give some people some background, we've been undergoing as a town, as you may know, sort of our own process that's reflective of the national conversation around how can we improve equity and inclusion, how can we improve how we show and value diversity in town. And over the past several weeks, maybe like almost 2 months, we've done a lot of researching, at least in terms of the select board, and listening to people within the community about what are different ways that we could do that. We looked at some neighboring town, for examples of human rights commissions, different diversity committees there, and we heard from the community members that there's a need around education, awareness, and outreach, a need for a multidisciplinary policy review, a way to handle a neutral process, and a way to handle complaints around, against the different town departments. And where we've landed is actually this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And there's a document that was included in your meeting packet, and I don't know if I should try and pull it up or if someone else should pull it up, but it would be helpful probably.
Give me a minute, I'll share that.
Okay. But this document that we're going to show you basically is something that the select board has approved earlier this week or last week. I don't know what date it is anymore, but basically it's a charter that we've approved and something that we're proposing and inviting the school committee to join in with us, kind of focusing on the bottom part of that document. Our proposed charter is starting the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that will serve as an advisory committee to the town of Westford, and that includes advising and providing recommendations to the select board as well as the school committee. We hope that the committee will identify needs around fostering acceptance and valuing diversity, discouraging prejudice and discrimination against multiple groups listed here, and that it would review the town and school policies and procedures and make recommendations at the end of the year in 2020. And the reason, there's been a lot of questions about why we would want to do this with the school committee. And I think the reason for that is that, the town leadership came together to put together a statement condemning George Floyd's death several months ago. And I think that coming together really shows leadership, really shows that this is an important topic for town leadership. And although we have very different parts of town that we oversee, this is a topic where we can come together and really show unity. And this would be a committee that's filled of community members only, 9 seats, and select board, school committee, and the town managers would be liaisons to this committee. We wouldn't be voting members. And it would really be up to the committee to in terms of what their scope looks like. We're really putting the power, the knowledge, and the information back to us from the community themselves. Does that make sense? So the proposed charter is there at the bottom. people who are interested in the committee would fill out the citizen activity form just as they would with any other committee. But we do have some candidate follow-up questions. We really, since this is such an important committee, not that the other committees aren't important, but there's a lot of information that we hope that this committee will kind of have to comb through. So we would be interested in hearing more about their interest, why they're interested in the committee, what their skills are. And also we would want to be able to leverage and amplify voices that maybe aren't usually part of our town committees, right? Maybe voices that we don't usually see. And so we're doing a lot of outreach to invite people to apply. So I'm going to stop rambling for a second. Tom, is there anything you want to say?
No rambling. That was perfect. The ask tonight is for us to answer any questions you have, but for you to consider voting on the charter language. We think all of us felt at the select board, and I know from conversations we had with folks in the school committee, there's so many intersectionalities in town between the experience people have at a town beach, walking down the street, getting on the school bus, coming home, talking to their parents, working with their elders, interacting with different town services like first responders and law enforcement. We're just stronger together as a town if this looks like a good idea to you as a school committee. So one point is discussion and then potential vote tonight on the charter if you're willing to do that. And then we would like to invite you to a joint meeting where we would jointly approve the applicants to the committee. And Chris, I don't know if it's easy for you to put the citizen activity form link in the chat, but that might be great. We've got some great applicants so far, but we need lots more. We're looking to access all the different communities here, different religious communities, people of different income, people with disabilities of various kinds, as well as people from different races. So we're looking to really have this be a broad group that can help us really listen better. I think that's what we heard in a lot of the town meetings, many of them from really eloquent Westford Academy students and alums. So that's what we're hoping to do tonight. And one other small ask is if you're willing to support this and join with us on this, we do need a little bit of help recruiting because the timeline's relatively short. I think we're hoping to invite you to a joint meeting on the 22nd. So about 3 weeks. So that gives us a little bit of time, but not a lot. To try to make sure we're really engaged with all the different communities we hope to reach. And with that, Madam Chair, maybe we can answer any questions that you or the committee have.
Thank you, Tom and Anita. So glad you could both join us tonight, and thank you for all of the efforts that have gone into the planning for this. From my perspective, as Tom said, we are one town. Schools and town flow together, and I think it does make sense for this to be a joint effort for that reason. I do want to clarify for the committee and the community, the schools have historically in recent years had it's gone through a couple different names, a diversity and inclusion team. This effort would be separate from the diversity and inclusion team on the school side. That team would remain intact, of course, because that team, may address very specific school needs like professional development of teachers, ADL training, and the like. So that group would certainly collaborate with this townwide committee, but would still exist for its own specific purposes, of course. So the names are very similar. Didn't want to cause any confusion there. So questions from school committee. Avery.
So thank you very much. I think this is a great effort. It's exciting to see this effort come together as a town, as one. Do we anticipate this working, Tom, much like the task force, the safety task force, where there's a diverse group of people that get together and then recommendations are made? I have to say I'm happy to have the school policies, but I'm not sure how those would those be handed to our policy group for implementation? And I guess I do, Gloria, I appreciate the clarification, but I do have a little bit of concern of having double efforts in the diversity realm. And I think Mark used to say we need to make sure we're not diluting things too much and having too many groups talk about the same thing and kind of bring it together. So just sort of your thoughts on those.
Well, first, and then I'll ask for Anita's help for anything that I may have missed. So the charter was very intentional in saying that this group will be tasked with making recommendations to the school committee and the select board. So all the policymaking authority resides entirely with those two elected bodies. So the idea here is we need to listen better, but we do want to have the policy making going on. It will be different from the town and school safety task force in that has a very high proportion of staff participation, because a lot of the work was sort of technocratic, studying best practices with safety, building safety and other things. This is really a sort of a deliberately structured committee of people from these various groups that we've just described, advising us, teaching us how to listen. And it was intentional to have the select board, school committee, if this is your wish and approve it tonight, and town staff have liaison non-voting roles, because we wanted to make sure that we didn't populate this committee as some other towns have with 20 people on the committee, 15 people are from established committees and town staff. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to find a new pathway to listen better. And Anita, I don't know what I've missed, but I'm sure a lot.
No, I would just only add that it's only since I joined the select board that I really saw how separate the school is from the town. And I feel like this issue really needs to be kind of, as you were saying, like a unified message, a unified voice. And I can't say that I understand the school side at all, because I really don't. And it's a completely different animal. But I do think I'm assuming, and I don't know the answer to this, that there would be a way or opportunities for us to work better together, and what that would look like, I have no idea. And I would really put that power back into the committee. I agree that there's so many things within the diversity and inclusion team that we would not touch, I think, or this committee would not touch, because it would just be too detailed. Mm-hmm. But if there's a way to keep things high level in a way that we can work together, town side and school side, I think this is one opportunity to do that.
Bill?
I just want to say, I think this is a very exciting opportunity for the school's diversity, inclusion, and equity team to expand its sphere of education beyond just the school system. We have talked about that on numerous occasions throughout the last 3 years. And so I think this is just an excellent vehicle to help. And I'm wondering if it might, we can think about it. It might be helpful if a member of this committee, the townwide committee, sat on our diversity and equity team in the school system, maybe 2 or 3 members, just so there can be a link in terms of connectivity of information and a sense of direction.
Yeah, one example I know that I can imagine, just throw an example of how this process might work, and Tom and Anita, chime in if you think I'm on or off base here. But I know one issue that's been raised with us through the WPS 8 Can't Wait efforts and from student advocacy is to look at our diversity in hiring practices. And I can imagine that is an issue that might get raised on the town side when the town does hiring, and also in the schools when the schools does hiring. So I think it would be informative to have this town DEI committee discuss that and kind of put forth priorities in terms of what would be important on both the school and town side about what would we want to see in diversity in our hiring practices, and to examine what the current hiring practices are. And then that information might turn into a recommendation that then might go to the school committee policy subcommittee to, in conjunction with our school administration and human resources department, craft a new policy that then would come back before this full school committee. Is that kind of the process we're talking about, Tom and Anita?
I think, first of all, we're trying to be deliberate about having the committee tell us what they are looking at in terms of sources of need. But if I was going to speculate, I think the idea of having a look at what diversity looks like today, what's the data? And then, are there, what's our goal as a town? Do we want students to come to school and see the future that they're going to see in the world? Just like, do we want people to see that in all the town services? So that could be a discussion and a recommendation that comes forward, Gloria. I think you're exactly right. And I think it's an interesting discussion to have, but I think I know it's a little bit uncomfortable for me and for a lot of people, but we're trying to leave it very open for them to tell us where the areas of greatest need are and make sure that that we're listening carefully to the committee. You're on mute, Gloria.
Thank you. I see Valerie.
I'm sure, Tom and Anita, you talked about this during your select board meeting, but just in case there's kind of a different audience tonight watching, can you review, like, there's no age limit, right, for the citizen activity forum? You don't have to be a U.S. citizen. Can you just, if those are all of the requirements, but if there's any others to mention, just for anyone watching that's interested?
Well, I think someone who's passionate about this topic area represents some of these communities that we have listed in the proposed charter, as well as we have some membership criteria or things that it's sort of like your nice to have. It's not a requirement, but maybe some background professional experience in like law, human resources, human social services. It's a pretty big list, but it's not to exclude anybody though. And I feel like a lot of this is some of the information that's going to come in through the inserts in terms of membership criteria selection.
And just explicitly, you can be a student. You don't have to be a voting age. And we have a couple applicants so far, which is really exciting. We're Westford Academy students. And also, you don't have to be a citizen. So you can be, anybody who's here as a resident in town can join. And if there are more questions than that about eligibility, happy to answer them, but it would be especially valuable to have people who have that perspective, I think, of being newcomers.
I anticipate there's going to be a time commitment though for this. So just kind of I don't know what that would be, and it's really ultimately the committee's choice and decision and stuff like that, but it just seems like there's a lot of work.
So since we touched on it, before I get to more questions, can we just clarify the process for someone who is interested? They would go to the town website and look for the citizens activity form, fill that out, and then some additional questions would be sent to them. And then that application would then come back jointly to the select board and this committee to make appointments over the next couple of weeks, right?
Right.
Fantastic. Other comments, questions? I saw some hands. Chris.
Yeah, well, first, Tom and Anita, thank you so much for bringing this to us. It's been exciting to see it develop. There are a couple things that I just want to ask if they make sense to have in the charter as clarifications. One is that this is a standing committee, not an ad hoc or a task force. Is that something, I don't know if that's something that belongs in the charter or gets clarified in some way for folks.
Just to say, Chris, you're correct. We did discuss, is this a task force? There's a little bit of inside baseball, but task force usually have a defined time frame and then disperse. That's not what this is. This will be a 3-year commitment. Standing committee is our intention, and a third of the positions will get a 1-year appointment. A third will get 2-year. A third will get 3 years, so that we get the rotation going, as healthy committees often do. So maybe in the publicity or maybe on the town website, we'll make it more clear. As you say, this we intend this to be a permanent committee.
Right. And then the other was, another thing that I don't know if this should go in the charter. It's just clarifying membership as far as number of members, and then anything, just so should people know that, select board and school committee members won't be members, but will have liaisons, that sort of thing. How will they work with the existing committees, and will select board and school committee members be eligible, or are we intentionally saying, no, we will have liaisons? We want public, other community members sitting on the committee.
Yeah, we had another document that I realized that we didn't actually include with this charter, but we've been proposing a 9-member seat committee, and that it's very intentional that select board and school committee is we're separate. We're just liaisons and not voting members. But yes, we should put that into this document that we've shared with you to make sure it's clear.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing no hands, I do want to say thank you to Chris, because you're very quick. There is a link in the chat to the citizens activity form. And do we have a motion?
Motion. I had to find my mute button, my unmute button, sorry.
So motion to I guess the phrasing would be a motion to add our support to the efforts of the Board of Selectmen in supporting the creation of the Town of Westford Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee that would have a membership of 9 citizens with liaisons from the town board, and we would make joint appointments to that board and receive their recommendations as to how to further our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in town.
I thought we were voting to adopt the charter as written.
Well, yeah, I guess
I thought that that's what they had really brought to us, but I
was trying to figure out what the form of the motion was. What form of motion are we looking for, Tom and Anita?
I think if you're willing to sign onto the charter, that would be one vote, and then any kind of resolution along the lines of what you said, Gloria, would be great. But I think that's what we're hoping for, is that we all agree to the charter.
Right, that we adopt the charter as presented by the select board.
Anita, you mentioned that you might add some clarifying language that was in the other document. Should our motion be, with, motion to adopt the charter with, reasonable edits as discussed?
Administrative edits.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
So the only thing I'll say, Chris, is that it might be easier for us to give sort of a clarifying statement around composition and the decision around who's a liaison, who's not. If you're comfortable with accepting the charter language as it is, we can certainly clarify all that surrounding information. But just to keep us from going through another round of edits and another vote, if you're comfortable with the charter language, that could be one approach. But of course, that's your discretion.
I think that makes sense.
Okay, so clarifying, because I think the motion we had on the floor was Avery, and thank you for making it much simpler than what I said. So it sounds like the motion on the floor is to adopt the charter as is, with the understanding of some of the other clarifications we've been provided, but we would be adopting the language of the charter as is. And did we already get a second? I think I heard Sean second.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we take a vote? All right. Roll call vote. Avery.
No, aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And I am also aye. So that is a unanimous approval from the school committee. Thank you, Tom and Anita, for joining us and for all your efforts. We'll look forward to seeing applications, and we'll look forward to impaneling this important committee. Thank you.
It's going to be great, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And as a parent, I just want to say how grateful I am to the hard work you're doing during such a difficult time.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yep. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Anita. Thanks for visiting. Okay. Next order of business would be our reopening updates. And I'm guessing Bill and Carrie have lots to tell us.
Well, we have sent the pods the configuration maps, geographically based, to the principals last week with the students, the names and the addresses within each pod. We tried our best with the town's GIS director. I want to thank Chris Kuchu and our student data employee, Michael Lassert. They did an extraordinary amount of work in putting together the maps. What I did is I took all of the data and really kind of configured geographically each K-2, 3-5, 6-8 district, and then the 9-12 map we configured such that all students in a family are in the same pod during the course of a week, so that they're not broken up. There might be a few adjustments at the last minute we need to make with students on the boundary between a particular geographical area within a school district. But that was quite a complex process. The principals have done a great job in taking a look at the numbers and getting ready to send out that information to parents. We understand. We absolutely understand that parents would like that information as soon as possible, and we will be sending it out. The principals will be sending it out shortly in terms of the pod assignments and classroom assignments. Our custodians have recently undergone training in CDC and OSHA. As I mentioned, cleaning procedures. They will have another session coming up. We are awaiting the arrival of some portable air purifiers that do an excellent job in covering about 1,500 square feet in filtering virus out of the air, virus particles. Those will be placed in small rooms, particularly interior rooms that have no windows. In certain guidance offices that have no windows, they will be placed in all the nurses' offices, and in the caring room, the preschool, and into our REACH program, where we work with children with autism. We want to make sure that those areas in particular, we apply just an added level of safety based on the restricted airflow if the room has no windows, or the nature of work with students. So we are continuing to distribute the personal protection equipment that has been coming in over the last 6 weeks. We have some additional arriving this week. We have had the air quality tests done. We are having HVAC repairs done as we speak. Some of them have already been completed, but some last minute work is being finished. As you know, that has been very important to teachers' unions across the state and to all of us. We want to make sure that our air quality is safe and maintains a level of safety, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But we've put a lot of work, and I'm talking about everyone on our planning committees have done an awful lot of work in preparing. Right about now, it's just add students, and that's what we're waiting for.
We did have a couple of questions posted in Airtable that touch on some of the things you discussed, Bill. The first was, where is the air quality report for parents to download? And also, when will filters be installed, or are they still on order?
The filters are expected in this week, and we have a team that will be installing them. These are the MERV 13 filters that have a higher level of filtration of particulate matter. We're glad to be installing those. We have actually purchased those from 2 different companies based on availability. A company referred to as called AirX in Hudson, New Hampshire, and a company Filter By in Talladega, Alabama. We scoured the country looking for MERV 13 filters for availability and timeliness in terms of arrival, and those are the 2 vendors that we ordered them from. In terms of the air quality results, we'll be glad to post those on our website. They are out at each school. Please keep in mind that the air quality test at this point was limited to the most important measurement was CO2. and there are no other toxic elements or particles in the air quality. Now, some people have said, well, of course, the CO2 levels are going to be relatively low. The buildings are unoccupied. That's very true. We understand that completely. It's just that we need a baseline measurement. And what we have found is that in all of our school buildings, our carbon dioxide level, if I were to take an average over our 10 buildings, probably about 430 to maybe 440 parts per million in terms of the sample of air, keeping in mind that the CO2 content in outside air is between 300 and 400 parts per million. The threshold between quality air in a room and air that is stagnant and is not showing enough circulation is represented by a carbon dioxide level of some very, very strict firms and agencies use 800 parts per million. The most often, I think it's 1,000 parts per million. So between 800 and 1,000 parts per million. Now, what we have done is we have ordered portable CO2 detectors that we will have in all of our schools. Gives an instantaneous readout of the parts per million in any classroom, any area. And so we know that if that parts per million shades up towards 800, we need to increase the airflow, okay, in a particular room. But it's good right now. It's very good right now. We expect it to be very good as we proceed forward. So good company that's done the HVAC study. They've also done the air quality results.
Alicia.
The portable CO2 detectors, how often, I may have missed this somewhere in one of the documents because there's so many. How often will the air quality be reassessed? And will that be made public as well? If there's, I know the day-to-day may not be made public, but are there plans for a reassessment to be done once we have our buildings at the 50% occupancy?
Yes, that will be done on a regular basis. I would say each room is probably going to be checked twice a week. We will use the additional custodian that we're moving down from the night shift to the day shift while we're in this plan to do that in addition to the disinfecting. So that person will be in and out of rooms with a log recording the CO2 level, because obviously we want the measurements taken when the rooms are occupied.
So the next question on Airtable was from a parent who's asking, I'm unclear on who will be notified when there is a positive case in the classroom. The presentation on safety and documents seem to contradict each other. It would be great to have clarity on that. And I think this touches on, there is a difference between the guidance from DESE and the Department of Public Health at some point, but that has been like rectified now, correct, Bill?
Yes, a joint document came out about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that has changed some of the reporting requirements, has changed some of the distancing requirements. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education originally indicated that, and I'm just reaching for some of the material here, that if there was a child who tested positive or a staff member who tested positive, that the entire class had to be quarantined. That is not the case. That is based on contact tracing. I spoke last week with our Health Department Director, Jeff Stevens, and Town Nurse Gail Johnson. They have been working with our school nurses. Our school nurses are, in fact, going to be assisting the Health Department in any contact tracing. So the key is who is within 6 feet or less, who was within 6 feet for a period of more than 15 minutes. And that represents a person who has been within close contact. Now, that will determine whether or not a person, whether an individual quarantines or not. A person who tests positive has to be out for 10 days. And then beyond 10 days, another 24 hours without any fever. And that fever has to be measured without taking any analgesics, okay, before that person can come back. any close contact by students or staff, they have to quarantine for 14 days because the virus could conceivably take between 2 to 10, sometimes more days, to become active in a person. So that we posted on our website last week a number of documents, the most recent guidance, the joint guidance between the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Department of Public Health, along with the guidance that our nurses developed. And our nurses, I have to tell you, have done an extraordinary job this summer. And I mean extraordinary, in putting together information and training materials, some of which is up on our website, all of which is up on our website right now. But they've also put together that document I think we sent out to you in terms of what happens if a person is symptomatic, what happens if a person is asymptomatic, and a group of decisions that have to be made. So parents would be contacted. You know, we can't use student names because that's a violation of HIPAA, the HIPAA law. But you know, they will be contacted if there is any suspecting of any danger or close contact that their child or a staff member might, you know, have experienced.
Sorry, hand, Valerie.
So you touched on like the notification guidelines for a close contact, but I think a lot of parents want to see like a classroom notification like we do for lice or strep throat or something. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that's going to be, Valerie, on a case-by-case basis, and that is what people from the health department have said repeatedly in terms of, is the notification necessary for the entire class, the entire school, or for a limited number of parents? So I'm going to defer, quite honestly, to the health department on matters such as that, because we've been told repeatedly that when it comes to addressing cases of this virus, that one size doesn't fit all in terms of what we do in terms of notifications and procedures, quarantine, isolation, etc. So I don't mean to be ambiguous, but unfortunately I have to be a little bit ambiguous on that answer. And that's very frustrating. It's frustrating for you, it's frustrating for parents, it's frustrating for all of us. It's just that we have always been told that it's on a case-by-case basis.
Wait, you're talking about contact tracing, Bill?
Not the contact tracing, but notification. Okay.
Well, Gail's been very clear about what she's going to notify and what she's not, I thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I didn't think Gail was questioning who was notified when. I thought that was pretty set forth and that the nurses would be helping. I thought the documentation was pretty clear on that.
The nurses will be helping in contact tracing. It's
Okay.
just, Valerie, I think your question was who will be notified?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not even looking for like your child is a close contact, but just that somebody in the classroom
Yes.
has had a positive case. You are not, you know, required to isolate or quarantine, but I think a lot of parents would like to see, you know, instead of kind of gossip will fill that hole if we
Yes,
don't
we would-
fill it. So
We would do that. Yes. I'm sorry if I misunderstood your question. Yes. After the contact tracing, in particular, but if there is a test, a student, or excuse me, or staff member test positive, yes, we would notify people.
Alicia.
So I just wanted to get clarification because the question that was asked about the close contact 6 feet, there was a specification in the question that said the presentation defines close contact as unmasked face-to-face. But what you just, within 6 feet, the written documents just define it as within 6 feet. And I wasn't sure if I heard you say, will that be 6 feet mask or not? That the person would be considered close contact? Are we just saying 6 feet period, whether or not you have a mask on or not?
And some of the documentation, a lot of the documentation that I've read, Alicia, it has not specified masked or unmasked. So that I've been going on the interpretation all along that it doesn't make a difference whether it's unmasked, masked, or masked. That's why we didn't go with the 3 feet
Okay.
of social distancing that the DESE recommended.
Okay. Thank you.
Related to some of these questions, specifically if a student has to quarantine, but the child is feeling well, can they continue with their schooling? How would they do that? If this was a student in the hybrid model, would they switch to Remote Learning Academy and back to hybrid, or kind of what would be the process for a student in the hybrid model who needed to quarantine but was feeling well enough to participate in schooling?
Carrie, do you want me to answer that, or do you want to answer that one?
I'm happy to take it. So we would really just look at the individual and take a look at that schedule. If there was a student where he or she was in the hybrid model and they had students streaming in from their class who chose to stay home, which is the Remote Learning Academy, then that child could hop on from home as well. So might there be a class where there is no students with who are streaming in with the Remote Learning Academy, and we would have to handle that potentially differently. I think some of the benefits of this model, though, is while certainly that in-person face-to-face time is very critical, there's also lots of times throughout the course of 2 weeks, which is one full cycle, that they are not all together. So for example, that student in the afternoon, if it's their in-person week, would have the same asynchronous work as his or her peers. And then on their off week, again, the asynchronous during the morning, and then they would be able to tune in with the teacher for the live remote sessions for those off week students. So we would have to look at the live streaming options for that individual's set of courses during the in-person portion of the week.
So that might play out differently depending on the age of the student, what level they were at. That leads into another question that was asked on Airtable about how the pods work for Remote Learning Academy students. So I know we've talked at the elementary level that students would be grouped in a pod and would be taught in the Remote Learning Academy as a pod of remote students. At the high school, because of some of the challenges of the high school schedule, those students might be live streaming in. This parent's question was kind of what happens at the middle school level? Where do they fall?
At the middle school, we're doing something similar to the elementary school because students are assigned to a certain team, and that set of students travel between the same teachers for their core academic subjects. We are looking to cluster all of the RLA students into the same class. So as that class travels through to the different teachers, to the math teacher on a particular team, social studies teacher, science teacher, when that class arrives at in science, for example, the teacher logs on remotely and teaches to that whole cohort of students who have been clustered together because of remote. One of the areas where it doesn't look so nice and neat is once the students go off to their world languages, for example. So you could have a cohort of students all clustered together because they're Remote Learning Academy and they go to their 4 content subjects that way. But then in that class, some students may be taking Latin, others French, others Spanish, others German. So in those instances, we are looking at the live streaming model for those kind of off-team courses.
So for the core team classes, it sounds like they wouldn't be doing that live stream, but for some of the IA, FL blocks, it could be necessary for middle school students.
That's right.
Okay, I think that helps answer this parent's question. and I should clarify this, I'm trying our best to get the questions answered this evening. If we don't get to everything, or if you have a question that you don't feel was clear, or is something that's very specific to your student, please reach out directly to your building principal. They can probably get you the best, most recent up-to-date information.
Lori, can I just make a couple more points regarding the kind of educational component of our model? So there have been some questions regarding homework and whether or not we're giving homework. And we are actually drafting a statement that will be sent to parents in terms of expectations around homework. We are still allowing teachers to assign homework, but we're really shifting to look at it differently. But it's the same shift we've been trying to make over the past several years since we've recreated the homework policy and regulations. So the idea is, again, we'll take the 2-week time frame because that's when students go through the full cycle. They're on week and they're off week. So teachers, and it's more conducive to the middle school and to the high school, they should be looking at their learning objectives over the course of 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, there are times where direct instruction, kind of hands-on, not literally, socially distanced, but hands-on live support is needed. There are times where students work independently, and this happens even in the classroom. And there are times where students are working in teams, collaborating. So what we're asking teachers to think about is take the big picture over the next 2 weeks and cluster the work and assign the work based on, well, if students are home and it's asynchronous, that's where the independent work would be best served. Whereas when they're here in front of me, this is where the live coaching takes place. And in either one of those sessions, the collaboration can take place too. So when they're looking kind of big picture, what is the learning objective? There may be times where a child in their A block at the high school level, for example, leaves A block and something is due the next time they convene, whether it be the next day or the day after that. And as long as we're continuing to meet kind of and think about the learning objective, it's not just assigning homework for the sake of assigning homework, but it's really just looking at all of the different modalities of how instruction will be delivered, both synchronously, live and remote, as well as asynchronously, and just sorting out and chunking out the different types of teaching into those types of sessions, depending on where students are. So we are not saying that homework will not be assigned. We are looking at providing time frames that absolutely mirror what we have in the policy. So 30 minutes per course at the high school level, and then it's scaled a little bit differently. We do think that it will be probably less homework at the elementary levels, because when you're talking about, again, over the course of 2 weeks, X amount of work can and should be done independently, well, the students will have the 5 mornings in a row in their off week to be able to complete the amount of independent work. So I think we'll be seeing less homework at the younger levels because they do have much more time to work independently on work that can be done independently. And then I think you'll see it feel a little bit more normal at the upper grades. So there's that piece. Another question that has come up is in regards to preschool. And we have said from the get-go that they are not doing this same schedule of on week, off week. And it's really based on the students' IEPs. And if you remember, we are not able to this year because of this COVID-19 situation and the hybrid model, accept tuition paying students. So our students at the preschool level, their participation and when they are in school will be based on their IEP services. So there are 3 different categories of services, and these categories are every week. So there's no alternating weeks at the preschool level. Some students who have a higher level of need and services are going 5 days a week. Some students are going Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and their services can be completed 3 days a week. And then there's another subset of students who are going on those off days, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So all of it is based on their IEPs. And so it's not as clean as kind of on week, off week. It's very individualized, but each student will fall into one of those 3 categories. So I think those are the updates that I wanted to make sure I got out tonight.
Questions about any of that? I know I saw one other question on the Airtable that was, will there be band, orchestra, chorus, or theater arts for this school year?
There will be. It will be done very differently. So we have a lot of limitations in terms of getting groups of students together and singing or playing instruments. We are shifting to remote as much as we possibly can for some of those instrumental lessons, but we're looking to maintain our program to the best of our ability. So we aren't doing any sort of whole cuts or reductions of those programs at this time.
Other questions? I thought I saw some hands. Valerie?
Yeah, I just was curious if, I mean, I know in some of these kind of questions, ad hoc questions and answers, some of them have touched on the Remote Learning Academy, but you know, and I know you guys have been very busy with negotiations and pod creations. And during, like in this last month, it was hard to kind of get some more details on Remote Learning Academy because we didn't know how many students we would be kind of opting into that program. But now that we know, so I think the range was like 30 to 40% per school. Like, are there still a lot of gaps that you guys are working on, and when do we expect some more details, or, you know?
Regarding the pod assignments, or?
No, I think just more like, I mean, would you, are you waiting to, I mean, like, would the pods determine, you know, which classes have the webcam or not? And just like, especially more for the K-8 level, I think I've just been hearing some concerns about the still kind of, it feels like a lack of details about the Remote Learning Academy.
Well, at the elementary level, it's been determined and students have been placed in a pod. Teachers have been told that they may have either half their class-ish assigned Remote Learning Academy, so that when they split into 2 pods, pod A comes in and those might be the in-person kids. The other half of their class are Remote Learning Academy students. So when A pod has their stay-at-home week and B pod comes in, the teacher logs on and does the live teaching instead of welcoming the kids through the door, welcoming the kids this way. So that has been determined. Teachers have been informed, and the pods fit nice and neatly into either half of a teacher's, or the RLA students fit in neatly into either half of a teacher's caseload, in which case one of their full pods is RLA, or the teacher may have 20 or 22 RLA students, in which case both of their pods are RLA. So that has been determined, but there's still, at the school level, they are still working on special education schedules, which will impact some of the class placements still. So that's why parents have not yet learned of their child's placement, and I'm sure everybody is feeling anxious to get there. So that's been set. At the middle school level, they are working out, both principals I spoke with today, and they do believe that their RLA students will be fit into a pod within a team at each grade level, and then therefore will travel to their 4 core content courses together in a pod. where the teacher will log on and that whole pod altogether will be online just like we are right now.
I think you touched on this, Carrie, but there was another question regarding special education services. So for a student in the hybrid model, is it possible that a child on an IEP would be asked to go to school in person to receive special ed services during their kind of off week? Or would they be receiving those services during the week when they're in school?
Yeah. And so both of those are possibilities. Certainly where more than half of a child's experience in the hybrid model, more than half is not in person, over the course of a full cycle, 2 weeks, there will absolutely be services that are going to be delivered online. And so each of the student support leaders, along with the special education teachers, are looking to this week and into next week, they are prioritizing schedules and looking how to cluster students. And so there might be students who receive some ELA support 2 times a week, 3 times a week. And then when they're in school, they may get it during their in-school time. And then when they're at home in their off week, it very well may be remote.
The second part of that question was when would parents kind of find that out so they can kind of figure out their schedules? I know all of this is still being built, but can parents whose students do have special education services, any expectation of when they might get that information?
There's a lot of time carved out this week for scheduling to occur, but also into next week as well. There is a lot that the special education teachers and teams have to do, even just, sorting out who's in the remote learning academy and how those services will look, and to students who may have previously been clustered getting similar services. If one's in remote learning and one's in hybrid, then there might have to be some other way to leverage our resources to most effectively service those students. So my guess is certainly I don't anticipate that being available to parents this week, but looking at some point next week.
Avery.
So I have a bunch of questions. I know we've been trying to get to the parent ones. First, I think it is imperative that the schools, the district, notify parents now that we are 2 weeks away from the start of school, and that if you are traveling, you need to be aware of where you are traveling and your quarantine requirements upon return. For some of us, which leads to my second question, which is, when will we have any sense of what the transition grades are going to look like? Unfortunately, with a freshman, I've heard nothing as to what to expect for that transition day. Are those planning to be in person or remote? And lastly, once we get the kids to school, I think sooner than later, I've asked that the school nurses and the health and safety group tell us the minimum requirements for the masks. I want to know what we're including and what we're excluding as far as requirements. I know I got an informal, word from one of the nurses, but I think that needs to be in documentation that is sent to the parents soon.
Yeah, may I say, in relation to the masks, Avery, that information is on our website in terms of number of plies, the issues associated with a gaiter. That is up on our website, and I would encourage parents to take a look at that. I will contact the principals again tomorrow about the transitioning into the grades. We originally talked about remote, then in person. I think the latest was remote again. But I will make sure that information goes out right away.
I'm pretty confident that at the high school and middle school levels that the grades 6 and 9 will be done remotely.
Yeah.
And the at the elementary levels, they're working hard to come up with a way to bring students in so they can see their teachers live and in person and their peers, but obviously doing it safely and making sure pods are separated. But they are still trying to work that out. If they cannot, of course, they'll be doing a fabulous remote experience for the students, but I know that they're determined to try to bring those students in.
Okay. And then Bill, will you be issuing guidance on quarantining, since I think the transition days would start 2 weeks from tomorrow? So I would assume that we would be asking families to really curtail travel to unsafe areas with the holiday weekend coming up. That's important.
Yes, because I've already sent that to the staff, and that is going out in one of my messages on a video tomorrow.
Okay, great, because Rhode Island is not safe.
The map is changing.
The map is changing. You can go to Colorado, you can't go to Rhode Island.
That's correct.
One more question from online. Can siblings from the same home sit together in one seat on a school bus?
The guidance on that is yes, they can. And we would allow that.
Valerie.
Can you talk about how the search for bus monitors is going? And then earlier we talked about kind of that notification for a classroom. Would that, a positive case in the classroom, would that also apply to kind of that informational notification if there was a positive case on the bus?
Yes, it would most certainly occur on a bus also. Bus monitors are very, very difficult to find right now. Very difficult. In fact, we have an ad out right now, Valerie, for even principal assistants, call them principal assistants, monitors for, pertaining to college students. We do have about 10 to 12 responses, but people are not responding to job ads with us or nor any other school system. I was just online with some of the area superintendents last week about monitors. Very, very difficult to find. So it's going to take a little bit of time in the first couple of weeks for the bus driver to work with the students in terms of their seating. Okay, particularly the younger students. Should not be as difficult with the middle school and high school. That's one of the labor categories that is we're finding is just not there. I mean, we sent out multiple ads for that, and we're just not getting any takers.
I guess we can consider that another call to the community for anybody who is on the line and does know of young people who may be home from college and doing remote college and have flexible schedules and might be looking for some extra employment. Where would students, college students like that, where would they go to find information, Bill?
They go to our website and click on the Employment Opportunities link, and they fill out an application there. And we've had some good interest from recent alums from Westford Academy. A lot of them are students who are sophomores and juniors. They would love to come back. Some of them are just checking. They're still waiting to hear from their own colleges or universities in terms of what their own schedule would look like, so they can piece together some employment with us.
Well, we would love to have those young alums come back and join us and help us with our younger students and be good role models for them. So I hope they can join us again. Other questions right now, or I know that the next question I saw was, oh, I'm sorry, there's a new one that is bus related. Do you anticipate all students who have registered for busing to have busing, specifically at the middle school and high school? So will busing be available for anyone who's registered so far?
Yes, we believe we have enough capacity.
Right. There's another question on here that relates to agreements with the union, but I don't want to steal Bill's thunder for any announcements. So any other questions before we discuss that? Oh, sorry, I missed a hand, Valerie.
Sorry, just a quick one. I saw an email from Bill about school start times, but I don't think that was, can you just clarify? Like,
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention that in a little bit, but I'll mention it right now. And that is based on the disinfecting test that we ran with the bus company last week. We're going to start out with the current school start and end times. As you know, the plan is for early release schedule, but we are not going to alter the times at the present time because we weren't sure back a few weeks ago before the disinfecting equipment, the portable electrostatic sprayers came in, Valerie, how long it might take to disinfect the bus. But we were very impressed with the test that took place last week. Several of us were on the bus with a representative of the bus company. Only took 2 to 3 minutes. So based on that, we're going to keep the current times in place right now. If there is a need after a couple of weeks of school starting to adjust those, we'll come to you and make a recommendation, but I'm hoping that will not be the case.
And thank you to our Zoom master, Chris, because there are links in the chat for employment opportunities in Westford Public Schools and also the hygiene and mask guidelines. You're quick, Chris. Unless I'm seeing another waving hand, Bill, do you want to update the community on the status of our discussions with the WEA?
Yes, I'm pleased, very pleased to say that the vote by the members of the teachers union, Unit A, which includes some additional personnel in addition to teachers, was taken today and passed. And it passed by a very healthy margin. So we're very pleased. We're very thankful to the staff and to the union negotiating team and our own negotiating team. It was a number of long sessions, but we've been able to work things out. As you may or may not know, any change in working conditions, such as those that have been brought on by the COVID-19 situation, require what's called impact bargaining after Chapter 150E of Mass General Law. And so it's labor law that applies to public school personnel. And so we're obligated. We had some very good sessions. And we want to thank everyone involved and thank the Unit A members certainly for ratifying that agreement.
Yes, I'd like to echo that sentiment and absolutely thank everyone on our negotiating team and the WEA negotiating team. They were really complicated discussions, but good discussions, and I think we've come to a really good agreement, which is good for staff and the school districts, and most importantly, good for our students. So thank you to everyone for all of the efforts that went into that. They were extensive, and it was really a good discussion, and in part in answer to the question that was posed by the parent in the chat. Those discussions are still ongoing. This agreement that we'll be addressing tonight primarily addresses the hybrid model of learning. It also touches on the potential for if we need to shift into models, but our conversations with the WEA are ongoing, and we will have future agreements that will address other topics and other potential models and other topics that are relevant to WEA members. So we really appreciate the discussion so far. We appreciate their ratification of this agreement as we embark back on school today. It is fantastic to have this in place, and then we will now be putting it to the committee tonight for a vote to ratify it from school committee. which as part of the member of the negotiation team, I would encourage school committee to support. Any questions, comments? Chris?
Just a brief comment. I just want to pause for a second. It's been a really hard few months, and I just taking stock of where we're at, like things feel a lot better than they did, say, even a month ago. I think just as far as the plans go, like just kudos to everybody working through the reopening plans. They're crystallizing. You know, we had to start broad and figure out the broad strokes, and then the finer details are filling in. So I think that's just huge, just like so much gratitude, and then so much gratitude for everyone involved in these negotiations. And I think it's a real community spirit where everybody is coming together and trying to do our best for the community and for the students. So it's just, it's great.
Thank you.
I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. Any other comments? Okay, then it is my pleasure to make a motion that the school committee authorizes me to sign on your behalf the memorandum of agreement between the Westford Education Association and the Westford School Committee, particularly pertaining to the hybrid model of learning and other issues contained therein.
Second.
Any questions before we vote? Okay, Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen, I believe, is still having connectivity difficulties, so unfortunately is not able to hop in. We hope he will be back for the remainder of the meeting. Valerie.
Aye.
And, oh, sorry, skipped Sean. Sean.
Aye.
And I am also an aye, so that will have to be a 6-0 unanimous because of Ming Chen's connectivity. I'm sorry, we've lost Ming Chen. The other issue, the other agreement which we have with the Westford Education Association pertains to kindergarten, correct, Bill?
That's correct. Right, and the union has approved the memorandum of agreement with respect to our plan for the full-time kindergarten staff.
Any questions from the committee pertaining to this second memorandum of agreement? Okay, then again, the second motion would be a motion to ask for the committee's approval. Oh, I think we may have Ming Chen back. He's trying to get back on. Ming Chen, are you back?
Sorry, this is the fourth time I got on. So I think I now it's a Zoom expert. I know how to click on the button.
I'm glad you're back with us, Ming Chen. We actually just completed the vote on the memorandum of agreement between the WEA and the school committee regarding the hybrid model of learning, and we were about to move on to a vote pertaining to the kindergarten staff. So I was in the process of making a motion to for the school committee to authorize me to sign on your behalf the memorandum of agreement between the Westford School Committee and the WEA kindergarten staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
And any questions before we vote?
So I do have a question about the vote we took last time, because last time I actually lost internet. When we were talking about the 0.4 funding for the kindergarten, I don't know if this question has been asked.
Yes, this memorandum sets forth that kindergarten staff would be working a 0.6 FTE in-person kindergarten teacher and as 0.4 FTE remote interventionists. And this agreement formalizes that.
Yeah, but the funding for the point 4. So last time, because I was offline, so I wasn't very clear. But I did text you about the funding question.
Well, may I answer that, Gloria?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we decided certainly, first of all, that we were not going to have full day kindergarten for several different reasons, and that we've talked about. From a funding perspective, Ming Chen, the advantage of now using the full-time kindergarten staff as sort of interventionists for students, many of whom they've had in the past year or two, is that is a new role that is above and beyond what we have in place right now. And so we do believe that that is eligible for the CARES Act. So that helps us greatly from a financial perspective. Now, that was not the driving factor in terms of our decision to do that, but it is a very important strategic financial component to it, in that since you see that money cannot be used to supplant local obligations. It's very similar to the supplement versus supplant provisions that have been in the Title I regulations for 60 years now, 50 years. So by redefining a new role in the afternoon for that 0.4 full-time equivalency for the kindergarten staff, a role that we have not had to this point in time, okay, relative to that staff, we very strongly feel it is eligible for the CARES Act reimbursement. Otherwise, we would be sustaining a $450,000 to $500,000 loss of revenue as a result of not being able to collect, full day kindergarten fees. So it works out well, first and foremost, from an educational perspective, in providing very important support services for children, particularly in grades 1 and 2, who most of the teachers have had in the past and know, but it also provides a very important strategic benefit to us in terms of possible, we think, very strong possibility of reimbursement under the CARES Act.
So from my understanding is that we have to spend the money before December 31st. Then what happened after December 31st?
Well, we're certainly hoping that there is a reauthorized piece of legislation, so that if there is none, which I don't believe it's going to happen, I do believe that Congress will certainly come up with funding. We're at least able to fund several months, 4 or 5 months of this activity, and at least minimize the loss to the greatest extent possible, loss of revenue from the loss of kindergarten fees. So there is no, from our perspective, there is no downside to it, because I do strongly feel that Congress will come up with some sort of reauthorized piece of legislation that we're hoping additionally will cover not only expenses that are incurred as a result of addressing the COVID situation, but lost revenues. That's very, very crucial to every community across the country.
So right now, the guaranteed funding is only to December 31st.
That until December 31st. That's correct.
Okay, so then if we have no funding available by December 31st, are we going to revisit this decision? Because then we don't have money to pay for those positions.
Well, we are, as I said, we're certainly hoping and expecting that either the state will help out or the federal government will help out. There are no guarantees in this, but we think this is a responsible plan academically and financially.
So should we actually put a clause like with funding available? Because if December 31st we don't have funding, then really there is an obligation which we're not funding.
Well, I think I guess my advice to you would be let's wait a little bit and see what happens over the next several weeks in Congress. We just had this MOU in place as of today. I don't want to do anything right now to violates the good faith effort that both parties put into it. I completely understand what you're saying, but I think we have a little bit of time to address that. And, certainly there'll be some information forthcoming with respect to some reauthorization of financial benefit.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. I totally understand that. So, so it's just like this will be actually be an item we need to revisit based on the funding.
It's based on the funding. We will have to come up with some strategy if Congress doesn't come up with some reauthorization.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, just want to make sure that everybody on the same page is that the money guaranteed is only till December 31st. And then after that, if we don't have any new source of revenue, then we have to actually come up with something. We'll have to take a different action.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding the kindergarten agreement? Okay, I believe we've already done motion and second, correct? So roll call vote, Avery?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I'm also an aye, so that is a unanimous approval. We will get both of those agreements signed and to the WEA tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.
Gloria, there's a question on the Airtable about whether or not the MOUs will be publicly available.
Bill, what is the characteristic practice with that?
We can, because that is, any collective bargaining agreement is a public document. And so I don't see any need for any inconsistencies with those two documents.
Yeah, the union contracts are publicly available on the district website. So this would be an addendum to that collective bargaining agreement. The next item we have is a set of student and family expectations of.
Gloria?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you go, there's a question in the Airtable relating to staffing that we were just talking about. It's asking for an update on staffing for qualified licensed teachers and whether or not we know yet how many long-term subs we will need. When will we be receiving staffing updates, essentially?
I think that's still coming on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss it.
Yep. Nope. Staffing update is right after this item. So this is a set of, and I don't know, Chris, you've been so handy pulling things up. If you can put this up on the screen, thank you. Our Zoom master. It is a set of student and family expectations of positive digital citizenship and confidentiality during remote learning sessions. And our thought was that first of all, and I'm sure Carrie can speak to this with better clarity than I can, but that it was very important for our students' privacy and confidentiality, for there to be some expectation and best practices in how remote learning sessions are conducted, and that this document would be something that students and parents would sign off on, and we would be adopting it really kind of as an addendum to each individual school's handbook, and that families would all kind of collectively agree to this set of expectations and best practices around remote learning. Carrie, you can probably speak to the details better than I.
Sure. Just because this is a new way of educating our students, and there'll be so many students that do participate in remote learning, we felt as though it was important just to provide some guidelines for the expectations. from the teacher point of view, I think, particularly thinking about Westford Academy, where they're teaching students in their classroom and the Remote Learning Academy students are streaming in. It's just important that we have expectations for families so that our teachers are feeling, most comfortable with this model, and that it does prevent any potential difficulties if people are unclear about what those expectations are. So we are asking that, similar to the classroom, that the student teacher experience is as similar as we can make it in the classroom, and that it's really between the student and the teacher. There certainly were times in the spring where parents would hop on and want to chime in, and it's an opportunity. They see the person that they send their children off to for most of the day, and it's a time that seems to be appropriate to be able to chime in and to speak to the teacher. And really, we just want to make sure that during the school day we remain professional and really around students, and we don't want to blur the line between at school and at home. So these are just some standard expectations to try to keep that connection during the Remote Learning Academy times truly between the staff member and the student. I think your mention of the handbook is a great idea, although I think it would be preferred and important that this does go out as a standalone document. So that would be our recommendation, just so it is highlighted. A lot of the things in the handbook are fairly routine, and I do expect that absolutely everybody reads it in its entirety before signing off of the handbooks. But because this is so new, we do really feel as though this sort of agreement should be sent out separately, independently, and then if it can be in addendum to the handbook as well, that would be a great addition.
Yeah, I would certainly think administratively, Carrie, you're absolutely on target, that it is so new and so important that all of our families really review these expectations in detail, and that all families and students really be clear about the expectations set forth here. So administratively, I would absolutely defer to you how this gets disseminated to families and approved by families. But I guess from a school committee procedural standpoint, in terms of our adopting it, it does seem to make sense for it to live as part of the handbooks, so that while it may require a separate signature and approval from families, if that's the way you choose to implement it administratively, that thereafter it would just kind of be incorporated into all of the school's handbooks, if that makes sense, and if that's agreeable to administration.
Sure.
Questions from the committee, or comments, questions?
Gunnar?
Yeah, Ming Chen?
Yeah, definitely, and this makes perfect sense, because a lot of institutions are doing that, basically set up expectations with various parties, between the teachers, between the students, and then between the administration. Can this be digitally signed? Or will this be digitally signed?
Well, that was not expected to go home that way, digitally signed. It's something that we had planned on collecting, but we can certainly look into that. And I'm not quite sure if some of those other documents that are sent home are signed that way, but it's a terrific idea if they can be. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I think that especially in the remote environment, and also in the current digital era, a lot of stuff now being digital signed. So we should actually absolutely explore that.
Great.
Any other questions or concerns, or do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion as long as it's going out, not as part of the handbook, but as its own document at the beginning of this year, because it is really critical to the functioning of this year. If in subsequent years we're gonna fold it in, that's fine, but right now it needs to be its own standalone. And I think each school was deciding which documents they were asking for electronic signatures and which were going home. And so I'd still like to let the principals have that flexibility as to how they get it signed.
Second?
Yep. No, certainly no disagreement, Avery, in terms of giving absolute flexibility to our principals and our administration about how this is disseminated and signed. I just wanted to clarify, your motion states that it's not incorporated into the handbooks.
This year, I do not believe it should be part of the handbook. I believe in future years it should, but that may not be the motion you were looking for.
That's okay. Thoughts on the committee about which way we do want to go on that. By saying it was included in the handbooks, I wasn't suggesting any administrative limitations on how it would be signed off, and it could certainly be signed off on separately. I guess by incorporating it into the handbooks, I guess it just gave it handbook level authority to then dovetail into any other items that are in our handbooks in terms of enforceability at a later time, was all that I intended by that. But absolutely, so I don't know if that's a friendly amendment or not, or if we're on the same page.
Yeah, no, I just didn't want it. I think next year, next spring, when we're doing handbooks, it then becomes part of the handbook. I just didn't want it to, be stuffed into the handbook or anything else right now.
I think this deserves to be called out separately, because this is so new, and then the situation is so new, and then nobody has dealt with this before. So I think the expectation needs to be called out separately.
Okay. Other comments on that, or we will let the motion stand as Avery articulated it, not how I articulated it. It is Avery's motion on the floor. Did we hear a second already? Sorry, I know we're doing a lot of voting. I'm losing track. Valerie?
Sorry, just then to kind of play devil's advocate, if it's not in the handbook, what are the enforceable, like what does apply to it for giving it teeth? Does that make sense? Sorry.
I would think the fact that you have approved it and adopted it, digital
Okay.
citizenship, and endorsed it as a school committee, because you essentially set the policies.
Okay. I just wanted to understand the handbook versus not
Yep.
discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I was trying to put it under that umbrella, but it sounds like it can be its own separate entity. And if that makes more sense to people for this year, because it is so new, absolutely. It'll be its own separate entity as an agreement and enforceable as such. That make sense, Avery? Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Did we get a second already? I apologize that I lost track. Yes, we did. Okay, voting on motion as articulated by Avery. Votes to Avery.
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen? Is Ming Chen on?
Sorry, my screen is frozen again.
We've got your audio though, so you can vote.
Okay. Oh, it's my turn?
Yes.
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I would also vote in favor. So that is a unanimous support for the positive digital citizenship and confidentiality expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for clarifying all those really important responsibilities for our families as we move into this new era of education this year. The next item on our agenda pertain to some updates regarding Westford Academy.
Well, the challenge this time of year for every school system, particularly under these circumstances, is staffing. And we feel confident that our elementary and middle schools have the staff necessary to conduct a hybrid, but we're having a challenge at the high school right now. And I think that seems to be the level across the state that seems to be the greatest degree of challenge in terms of staffing. We've had a number of staff who have been unsure whether or not they will be coming back or not for a variety of reasons, other the Family First Corona Response Act, or either ADA or FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. And so it is challenging to us. And we're trying to staff positions right now, and we will be giving you an update over the next few days this week in terms of whether or not we are in fact able to appropriately staff Westford Academy. Now, Jim Antonelli has been sending Carrie and I texts because Jim was going to be on the meeting here, but like Ming Chen, he is having terrible difficulties he has no internet service right now, so he sends his apologies. But I have to tell you that we're having a struggle, and we're looking to. We've had job ads out. We're doing everything we possibly can to try and staff. So stay tuned. It is the one area that is really, really very concerning to us, I have to tell you. And so I'm going to be communicating with you sometime this week in terms of whether or not we're going to be able to pull this together at the high school.
So Bill, if there are people out in the community who maybe have a background in education or teaching, and maybe are available now and could maybe assist in being a short or long-term substitute at Westford Academy or one of our other schools, how would that member of the community connect?
Well, we subscribe to a company called School Spring, and so I would encourage them to go to the schoolspring.com, and they will see job opportunities and fill out an application there. They submit their resume and other materials, but we'd encourage them to do that as quickly as possible.
And Chris is always one step ahead. It is already in the chat, is the link. Other questions from the committee?
How, Bill, will that be communicated to parents?
Well, we're going to communicate it to you first, and then we're going to communicate it to parents as soon as I think we'll be doing that. You'll hear something from us within the next several days, or maybe even into the early part of next week if we continue to be able to try to piece it together. But we're having a real struggle right now and a real challenge. And everything has been going so well, and it's just very disconcerting that we're facing these hurdles right now, but many other communities are also. So we'll let you know, and the parents know, and the students know as soon as we possibly can.
So Bill, how many teachers are we in need of?
Well, we have about 4 positions in social studies, about 4 in math. Carrie, correct, and Ingrid, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we just met on this again today. Plus, we have some singletons, in the area of art, special education, some of the other areas that we might be able to cobble together, okay, and make it work. It's just when you have a department that has 4 or 5 staff that have now indicated, well, we don't think we can come back. It's concerning, and it makes it much more difficult to make it work, because 4 and 5 staff translate into, believe it, correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, about 20 to 25 sections, teaching sections.
Right. I think the last count was a total of 11 staff members. And as Bill mentioned, it is more difficult when they're concentrated more in specific departments. But right, 11 staff, I suppose doesn't sound like a huge number, but it translates into 55 sections that we would have to cover. So those are the things that I know Principal Antonelli was number crunching today and reaching out to some individuals who were on the fence just to understand what their thinking was if they are, looking to come back or would need to take a leave. So those are the pieces that we're just trying to plug together, think creatively to how to get, qualified people in place to cover those sections. But, one teacher teaches 5 sections. So once you start getting up into the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 range, there are a lot of sections that need to be covered.
Yeah, I don't envy the administrative challenges that are facing you right now. I applaud all the efforts to think outside the box and try and find ways to make this work. Any other questions from the committee at this time? Then, if I'm not seeing any, we'll obviously anxiously await further updates and wish you good luck with all of your efforts.
Thank you. I just want you and the community to know that we're, Jim, his staff, Kerry, Ingrid, Jen, Burke, and I just working on it day and night, trying to see what we can come up with. And so it's not for lack of effort.
Thank you, everyone, for all the efforts that are going into this very complex school year ahead of us. The next item on our agenda is perhaps a lighter item about annual building tour updates.
We're looking forward to going through some of the schools with you. We have a session, I'm just confirming in my calendar, coming up for this Wednesday morning. And you're going to have to rise and shine early because we're going to start at 7:30. We're going to start at the Abbott School. We're all going to get on a school bus and we're going to go to a number of buildings. Abbott, the NAB, the Miller Day, and Stony Brook. And hoping that we can do that within a 2.5 to 3 hour time frame. And then next week, we'll do an afternoon with the remainder of the schools, because it's important for you to see what the spacing looks like. I think you'll be surprised when you see what the classrooms look like with only essentially half the number of desks in there and half the number of students. Of course, the students won't be in at that point in time, but it's really a scaled down environment in terms of occupancy of a classroom and spaces. So we want you to see that. You can ask any questions. You can see some of the personal protection equipment that we have in place. And I think it's very good. And I commend you for wanting to see and experience that.
Yeah, we've had those of us on the union negotiation team have had the opportunity to be in some buildings, and it is really interesting to see some of the room setups. So I think it is very helpful to see it in person. So thank you for accommodating these early building tours. I know normally we do this later in the fall, but I think doing it at this time of year makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. I think I'll have to clarify something with Nina about scheduling, because I think maybe I had one of these dates differently, but we'll clarify the scheduling for everybody's calendars. And I guess I had one other question was are we going to be able to ride the bus?
Yes.
Wonderful.
That is a requirement. Okay. Because there you'll see the social distancing on the bus. Also, you're not going to be able to sit together, one person per seat.
I don't want to sit next to Chris anyway.
And if you'd like, I think it's a good idea if we do a fast at the end of the the trip a fast simulated bus disinfecting for you, so you see what it looks like.
That sounds great.
Yeah, exciting.
I thought you were going to say fire drill and make us jump out of the back.
Well, that comes at the next
That works too.
next meeting.
Okay, so we will clarify those dates for the committee, and I've already got a message or two. I might have had my dates backwards, so I will double check those dates and get back to all of you. And then, well, did we already really address through one of the questions the air quality survey update, Bill?
Yeah. Yes, we have.
Okay, so we've already addressed that. So special town meeting warrant.
Ingrid.
All right, can people hear me? I'm now resorting to the phone. Special town meetings coming up, and at the last department head meeting with town staff, Jody mentioned that at the next select board meeting, they're going to be closing the warrant. So I just, wanted everyone on the school committee to be aware of articles that pertain to the school department that would be coming up at special town meeting.
Right.
There's an article regarding capital appropriations, which still hasn't been finalized of what most of our requests were taken care of at the annual town meeting in June. I think that what they have listed right now, the rack truck was left over from like last November, and so that still needs to be discussed. The capital committee, I believe, I just got a notice for the first meeting, so all these will be reviewed again, and then we'll be discussing if there's anything immediate that we need on this list. So I think we took care of most of our needs in June. Really, one of the most important for the school department is Article 10, which is right now the Community Preservation Committee recommendations, and within that is the amenities building at WA, which had some discussion in June and did not receive the 2/3 vote to bond that article. So that is something we're really living on borrowed time with the waiver of not having this facility available if we use the academy field, the turf field in the stadium. So we are at risk not only of all our athletics, but even future town meetings, which I believe special town meeting will again be at Westford Academy outdoors.
May I just say, and I'd like to reiterate again, I think the sense of the meeting was that they supported the building, but did not support the use of community preservation funds for it.
So just to cover all bases, though, Jim Antonelli has resubmitted that application to the Community Preservation Committee for consideration again.
Yeah.
And then we will be speaking to the Capital Committee as to discuss a different way of funding as an alternative. And then lastly, right now, Article 18, which is a placeholder to move annual town meeting to May. So this is where I do feel strongly as your finance director that an earlier town meeting gives us less perfect information. And by moving the meeting back to May allows us within our budget cycle to really have 2 full quarters of data. Yeah. We also have a better sense of our burn rate on both at payroll and expenses.
and also have a better sense of the enrollment going into the next year, because with a meeting in May, I mean, obviously families still make decisions in June, July, August, but I think we'd have a better idea of the student population that we would be looking to fund with a later town meeting. And lastly, particularly in this year, the idea that we would be ready to hold an indoor town meeting in March might be extremely challenging. So that's my plug. And what Jody was looking for were for departments to weigh in on this. You know, I know the police department is has expressed similar concerns just from the budgetary standpoint, that having a later town meeting just helps the whole process. But obviously, you know, I'm not going to speak for their department, but if you were in support of this, it might help to weigh in as well as from the school committee.
So they're looking for a vote from us on moving the town meeting.
Well, eventually, I think right now it's just, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this is a placeholder right now. And if this was something that you would be supportive of, just, it might help to make sure it stays on the warrant.
Do we make that known with a vote tonight, or do we make that known that Gloria takes that to joint chairs and shares that we are supportive of the move today?
That's you know, your purview. I think either would work. I think eventually a vote would be important, but that's not necessarily. I think maybe we brought it tonight just for some discussion that you could have and feel each other out on where you stood on this.
I do agree with taking that to the joint chairs, Avery. I think that's the most appropriate vehicle to initiate that discussion and solidify it.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the heads up with everything focused on reopening. It's difficult sometimes to think ahead to special town meeting, but it's going to be on us before we know it. So thank you for the update there. Thank you for the update about the Westford Academy amenities building. You know, my sense was similar to Bill's, that the concern from the community wasn't necessarily about the project, but was really about the procedural mechanism for how the project was being funded. So I'm glad that that's being discussed, and the relevant town boards are kind of working through various possibilities for how that will be addressed. With regard to the timing of town meeting, I would be curious if it will be discussed at joint chairs to hear what other members of the board think. I know my thoughts on it, but I'm curious to hear others. Alicia?
As Ingrid and Bill both said, I am fully in support of this. I think it's also important to note that this isn't necessarily moving town meeting. This is returning town meeting to when it used to be held. It was shifted to March many years ago, and this would be shifting it back. And I think given how, excuse me, given how our financial calendar works, and when our buildings close and when we have to close out our budget, this just makes way more sense to me. And to Ingrid's point, if we have to do any kind of distancing, I don't want to be out in the middle of the track in March either. I think that's, you know, I'm a hardy New Englander, but I am not that hardy. So I am very much in support of this.
Valerie?
Yeah, clearly this would be my first budget cycle, but Ingrid had me at better data, so I'm all for it.
That one's going down in quote history. Yeah, I think that this makes perfect sense. This year of all years demonstrates us, you know, how difficult the uncertainties are, but really in any budget year, I think we've seen this over the last couple of budget cycles of how difficult it is to begin forecasting our needs for the upcoming school year so early in the current school year. You're barely into the current school year before you're already planning ahead for the budget for the next one. So anything that provides us with more time, provides you with more time to come up with better forecasting and better information, I think just makes a lot of sense for our department in particular, but I'm sure other town departments as well. So any other views, or am I sensing a general consensus that school committee would want to convey our general support for this move? I'm seeing some nods and thumbs up. Great, fantastic. We will convey that, and I'm sure at some point it may come back to us for a more formal vote or as a recommendation on the warrant. But hopefully this will be on the warrant for town meeting this fall. And just to clarify, my own understanding of it, Ingrid, this is a permanent change. It's not just for this year, but it would be permanent moving forward, correct?
I believe that right now that was the discussion, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are we on to our own warrant votes? Yes, we are. Okay. Take it away, Alicia.
Okay. Motion to approve payroll warrant 2110 SP in the amount of $1,939,252.48.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And roll call. Avery?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Has Ming Chen dropped off again? Unfortunately, I believe he has. Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I would also be in favor. So that is a unanimous 60. Next one, Alicia?
Motion to approve expense warrant 2110 SE in the amount of $618,345.01.
Second.
And roll call. Avery?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back again.
We're voting on on our expense warrant from the agenda.
Oh, okay. Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I would also be in favor. So that would be a 7-0 unanimous. Ming Chen, you're being very brave with logging on and off. Thank you for hanging with it.
Yeah, I'm just so glad like we're not going to do Zoom anymore, right? Are we?
We're really hoping to be back in person soon. We very much are. Alicia, what's up for minutes?
Motion to approve regular session minutes from 7:27, 7:29, 8:10, and 8:17.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay. Vote is to Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
I just wanted to say sorry for the backlog. I struggled through the summer, but hopefully we'll hit a groove going forward. Aye.
No worries, you're all good. Aye. Thank you for all of the work on these minutes. It's been quite the heavy summer compared to our normal summer meeting schedule. So thank you to you and Nina for all the work on all of the minutes. Do we have one more motion?
Yep, we do. Motion to approve executive session minutes not for public release from 6:15, 8:3, and 8:5.
Second.
And vote to Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And I would also be in favor. So that is 7-0. And personnel update. Bill.
Excuse me, I was muted. As you said, quite a few entries into the personal update. Many of those reflect the leave requests that we have received, either through ADA accommodations, FMLA, or the Family First Corona Response Act. We do have a number of resignations and not an unusual personnel update for this time of year.
Any questions, or are we ready for our final motion? Okay, Alicia, back to you.
Okay. Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to Unit A collective bargaining, and an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Second.
Roll call vote. Avery,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Valerie,
Aye.
and I would also be unanimous. So thank you to the public. We will not be returning to a public session, but please stay connected for updates from your building principal or from the district. And we will see you again in several weeks. Good night, all.